How's it going, guys? My name is Graham. Welcome to Two Left Thumbs. I'm doing another comic book character breakdown. This time we're talking who is Marvel's Monica Rambeau. I really love comic book characters and movies and properties and things, but I've never really had the time to go way back deep into the catalogs of the comic books. So now and again a character like Shang-Chi pops up, I want to know more about it. If I'm going to research it anyways, I might as well distill that information and pass it along to you guys, because you probably have similar questions. I'm going to place some timestamps off to the side here, depending on what you specifically want to learn about. I'll kind of construct things in hopefully a logical order in case you just want to know all of it. But first we'll talk about everything we know about how she'll be included in the MCU, the movies, the TV shows, just since that's like pertinent information that people want to know immediately. Then we can get into the character, who she is as a person, her powers and abilities. We can get a little bit into her original development, how she was first introduced in the comics and the role she's played there. I'm going to highlight some of her more important stories. I obviously can't include every single arc and offshoot and everything that she's been a part of, but the core, most exciting, most important things, especially when it comes to how it might be adapted into the MCU, which leads me to my final point, where I'll kind of highlight a few specific things that might be the direction that Marvel Studios chooses to take this character. Some of you may have already seen, I did a live stream of the SDCC San Diego Comic-Con 2019 Marvel Hall H panel. We were just kind of watching the social media feed. It was really fun. But during the announcement of WandaVision, they said that Monica Rambeau would be a part of that TV show, and the name didn't immediately click for me, and I got eaten alive in the comments. I had never claimed to be like the biggest comic book nerd or anything, but people even then were still stunned that I hadn't heard of this character, and after having read up on her a bunch now, she's a fucking cool character. So like I said, we know that she will be appearing in the Disney Plus show WandaVision, which I believe is due to premiere at the beginning, sometime early in 2021. We'll have Elizabeth Olsen as Scarlet Witch as Wanda, and Paul Bettany, to some extent, is going to be Vision. This takes place after Endgame, so it remains to be seen if his mind was, salvaged by Shuri during the events of Infinity War, or how they're going to tie that together. Very interested to see where that goes and how Monica Rambeau is going to fit into that. It's also been said that this is very directly going to lead into Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness. Scarlet Witch is going to co-lead in that movie, so there is a chance that Monica Rambeau will carry into that movie as well. Considering that the other shows that they're doing right now are like Falcon and the Winter Soldier, and they didn't come up with some weird Falcon Soldier, or I don't know, Winter Falcon. They didn't come up with like a weird name. WandaVision is so specific and so strange, and it's written like one linking cable, so there might be some sort of weird neural link between Wanda and Vision that exists now. Vision might not physically be a character anymore. I'm super curious to see where that goes, because there's a lot of unanswered questions right now. In WandaVision, they've already cast Teyonah Parris to play the character. Now, the name Rambeau is familiar to me, maybe it was to you guys as well. Brie Larson, Carol Danvers' best friend in the Captain Marvel movie, was Maria Rambeau, and Monica was her little girl in that movie. Lieutenant Trouble. That movie took place in the 90s, so Monica was portrayed by the young actress Azari Akbar. We're jumping ahead a good 20 plus years here. Endgame kind of sent things even further ahead, and so Teyonah, the new actress, is actually 31 right now, so we can expect the characters around there as well. Interestingly, she is the same age as Lashana Lynch, who played Maria Rambeau in the Captain Marvel movie. So, we met a young version of the character in Captain Marvel. She is for sure going to be in WandaVision. There is a good chance she'll be in Multiverse of Madness, but that is not confirmed. Now, let's get into the actual character here. Things like her superhero name, where she got her powers, the role she has served within the comics, and her abilities aside from superpowers. Now, Monica was actually introduced as the second Captain Marvel, and no, Carol Danvers is not the first. Now I'm forgetting, but Carol Danvers is like number 5 or something. There was the original Captain Marvel, who we had in the movie, but a very different version of them in the movie. But even though the character was introduced as Captain Marvel, she has since gone by Photon, Pulsar, and as of 2013, up till now, Spectrum. I'll talk a little bit about how that all developed and changed over time when I get into the important storyline section. Fun little Easter egg thing, Maria Rambeau's cool fighter jet codename was Photon, which is kind of a reference to Monica Rambeau's eventual superhero name. Monica was born in New Orleans, and was a lieutenant in the Harbor Patrol there. Without getting into the long specifics, she was kind of a woman of action, taking charge, and she tried to stop the creation and use of a dangerous energy disruptor weapon. Through her efforts to stop the weapon, she was bombarded by extra-dimensional energy, which gave her her powers. Her powers all have to do with energy control and manipulation. We'll talk about it specifically in a moment. When she emerged this superpowered being and was doing these amazing superhero feats, the media dubbed her Captain Marvel. It wasn't until later that Ben Grimm informed her that there was a Captain Marvel already. At that time, though, Marvel had already passed away. She sought out the Avengers to help her control her powers. Just a silly thing, early on in her training, one of the villains that she helped take down was Egghead. Yeah. Which in and of itself is funny, and it blew my mind when I found out that Egghead already exists in the MCU. We have seen him in a movie. His real name is Elias Starr, and he appears in Ant-Man and the Wasp, played by Michael Cerveris. Yeah, we have Egghead in the MCU. Very quickly, she is promoted to a full member of the Avengers, becoming their first African-American heroine. And by continually proving her worth and abilities, she works her way up to leader of the team. Now, in addition to her powers, she's a very capable, able person. That's part of why, pre-being a superhero, she's off doing missions trying to take on energy disruptors. She's a very strong leader, an expert marksman, very strong at hand-to-hand combat, and a very strong detective, thanks to her years on the police force. And through her time in Harbor Patrol, she's a very strong swimmer with expansive nautical expertise. Now, this is actually because of her powers, but it is less of a superpower and more of an ability. She has a photographic memory. Specifically, her powers, which I'm going to do in a bit of a list fashion. She can transform her entire body into any form of electricity from the electromagnetic spectrum. So what we've specifically seen used in the comics are cosmic rays, gamma rays, X-rays, ultraviolet, visible light, microwaves, radio waves, and neutrinos. She can only transform into one of those at a time. She can't be like half radio, half visible light, but she can transition between them near instantaneously. In her energy forms, she can fly, travel near the speed of light, and move through the vacuum of space. She has the ability to absorb, manipulate, and create different forms of energy. She can shoot energy blasts from her hands in any of those wavelengths. She can project light-based holograms of herself, also mapping it on top of herself. So her physical form isn't actually changing. Her voice isn't going to change. She's not suddenly going to have, the power of the Hulk if she made herself look like the Hulk. But it's just kind of cool surface-level illusion stuff. By transforming herself into, say, radio waves, or basically anything other than visible light, she can become invisible. She can split herself into multiple smaller energy beings, all working out of a collective consciousness. When she's in an energy state, she kind of lacks the ability to interact with objects, but she can do a thing where she kind of half resolidifies to, kind of grasp things. Or she can do things like play around with kinetic energy to move them instead, even if she's not physically doing it. The established rules of that part seem a little shaky. She's immortal. She doesn't age. That's pretty cool. And she has what has been referred to as hyper-cosmic awareness. It has a very long explanation rooted in the cosmic extra-dimensional origin of her powers. Basically, she has spidey sense at the scale of the universe. She can perceive disruptions and dangers and things that are happening in, other galaxies. Obviously, it's limited and not, instantaneous and everything, but it's pretty broad in scope. Now, her herself, as a non-energy-based being when she's in her human form, is pretty much a standard fitness-level human. She's quite vulnerable, actually. Luckily, those transitions to energy are instantaneous. I get the impression that this character, since their inception, has operated a little bit like Superman for DC, where they kind of have to contrive reasons that they're not able to use their full power. Monica's ability to just turn into energy and move at light speed and just blast people as lightning and then whatever crazy shit she does is kind of hard to write stories around because she can kind of one-man a lot of things. I'll be interested to see how much power the MCU is willing to grant her. We've recently seen characters like Doctor Strange and Scarlet Witch really get beefed up in power. So if we have Strange, Scarlet Witch, and Monica Rambeau on screen together, who are arguably three of the strongest characters right now, the threat level is going to have to be pretty insane. Now onto the character's inception, creation, and development. The character was first created by writer Roger Stern and artist John Romita Jr. back in 1982, while taking over the Amazing Spider-Man with issue number 224. And as a quick aside, this pair also was responsible for creating the Hobgoblin, who as a kid was my favorite villain. The artist John Romita Jr., when first drawing her, drew her to look like the actress Pamela Grier. As the character's been around longer and more artists have had their turn, she's kind of moved away from that. You can't really see that resemblance anymore. After writing for The Amazing Spider-Man, Stern led a 5-year run on the Avengers, at which point he brought in Monica Rambeau, keeping her as a significant main character, going from her time as a beginner to an official member up to being a leader of the group. It kind of makes sense that he would take a character he created and help her rise up to leader of the Avengers to show off how powerful she is. I just think that's a cool thing to kind of know that if a writer created a character, they're going to do everything they can to sell that character as being very strong and important. But after stepping away from leader of the Avengers, she has stuck around as a reserve member, frequently stepping in to help them during big events, and even filling in as the leader when someone else is indisposed. But honestly, it seems the way the character was introduced with her level of power and leadership skills and everything, she was kind of destined to rise to that sort of position as is. I found a couple top 10 lists of best all-time leaders of the Avengers. Steve Rogers as Captain America is pretty much always the top of those lists. Someone like the Wasp is usually quite high, and Monica Rambeau is almost always on those lists. Some of her more important stories that I came across, including a lot of why her name has changed so much over time. Now, while she's introduced as Captain Marvel, she doesn't keep that name for overly long, eventually ceding it to Mar-Vell's son, Genis Vell. There's a long, winding, varied history there, but as of most recently in 2013, as a part of Marvel Now's Mighty Avengers, Monica Rambeau, now going by Spectrum, is the field leader of that team. During her time training and moving up through the ranks of the Avengers, Wasp was the leader. Did you say Wasp? The Wasp? The Wasp was the leader. When she stepped down and moved on, Steve Rogers, Captain America, specifically nominated Monica Rambeau to take over. She's generally seen as a very excellent leader, guiding her team of the Avengers through several very difficult events, all while having to deal with this Dr. Druid. He was a telepathic new recruit who was continuously trying to undermine her authority, trying to subvert what he could, turn the other Avengers against her, and him trying to take her position. She was able to keep that in check, though. Her last major event while acting as full leader of the Avengers was when Namor the Submariner's wife, Marina, which, come on with that name, transforms into the giant sea creature Leviathan. Monica was able to turn the tide of that fight by transforming herself into this giant lightning bolt and striking the creature, but by touching the water of the ocean, it sent the atoms of her being scattering, conducting through the ocean. She was barely able to reconstitute herself and regain her physical form. When she did, she was dramatically weakened and had completely lost her powers, thus forcing her to step down as the leader of the Avengers, and rightfully also resulting in a lasting fear of using her powers around open bodies of water. Over time, she slowly regains her strength and power. It's coming back in pieces and usually in limited capacities. Even while severely weakened, she's still acting as a reserve member of the Avengers because she's still insanely strong. It's pretty clear that the rest of the team has a lot of respect for her leadership capabilities. She fully regains her powers through the help of the alien Stranger. Around this time is also when she is fighting alongside Star Fox, who is Thanos' brother, and Genis Vell, who is Mar-Vell's son. Her and Genis get to know each other a bit better and have a growing respect for one another, but they were also both going by Captain Marvel at the time. After defeating the Controller, they both feel that the other is more worthy of the name. Genis Vell simply recognizes her power and thinks that she should keep it. Monica recognizes that maybe she's stepping on the honor and the legacy of Mar-Vell and allows Genis Vell to keep the title. At which point she adopts the new alias Photon. Then, in a super little bitch move, Genis Vell starts calling himself Photon. He gained a few new powers and he was just like, you know what? What's a cool name? Photon? Thought of that one myself. What the hell, dude? It's like the time in the Canadian Football League when there was 8 teams and 2 of them were called the Rough Riders. Fun bit of Canadian lore for you guys. It's weird to call it lore. But yeah, I guess we're not very good at naming things. What's our Canadian national anthem going to be called? Oh, Canada. But come on, Genis, work on something original here. And for some reason, just being chill as hell, Monica just throws up her hands and is like, whatever, dude, and starts calling herself Pulsar. Not a particularly significant story or anything, but just something cool. During the Avengers and Justice League crossover event, Monica eventually squares off against the Green Lantern, Kyle Rayner, and she is able to defeat him by basically just draining the power from his ring, leaving him totally inert. I like Marvel and DC. I'm not trying to stir up any Marvel versus DC stuff. I enjoy both of them very much. I just thought that it was cool Marvel got that win. There's all sorts of middling storylines of her either leading or playing part in fighting many different enemies. Many of them are not huge catastrophic events. One of her recurring nemesises is actually Nebula. A lot of them are characters that I wouldn't expect the average comic book reader or consumer to be familiar with. I certainly wasn't. So some of the most interesting stuff to me was the role that she has repeatedly played in fighting vampires. I think this might have been earlier in the character. I kind of lost the thread of this timeline here, but at one point she fought alongside Black Panther, Luke Cage, Blade, and this character Brother Voodoo, an all-black superhero squad that teamed up to fight vampires in New Orleans after Hurricane Katrina. I haven't read that storyline, but I think I'm gonna. P.S. Brother Voodoo, Jericho Drum, not a character we've seen in the MCU, but one I am curious enough about that I might do a video on. During 2013's Infinity storyline, she gets a new outfit, starts calling herself Spectrum, but during that Infinity storyline, Eric Brooks, Blade, tries to secretly recruit her because there's a vampire invasion going on. He was like, we gotta go deal with this shit and we need you. Her repeated battling of vampires and teaming up with Blade and things leads me into my ideas of how I think this character is going to be introduced and utilized in the Marvel Cinematic Universe. Which, keep in mind, at this point, people were disappointed that we had whatever it was of 5 movies in 2 years. These TV shows are like huge. They are going to be very important to the overall timeline and plot and are going to be like must-sees. So yeah, her being specifically rolled out into WandaVision, I presume is that she can springboard into other movies and other properties. I don't really know precisely how that's going to fit into WandaVision. I don't know if she's already going to have her powers. Something like giving a character like Monica Rambeau, who we've already met in this universe, her powers as a B plot of WandaVision. Hell, maybe it's the A plot, but I have no concept of what that show is actually going to be about. That seems like it would be a strange focus for the show, but we might see her gain her powers in that show. Otherwise, she's just going to jump on screen already juiced up and super strong, probably going by Spectrum. Obviously, she's not going to be Captain Marvel, going to avoid that confusion. She might be Spectrum to align herself with the current comic book continuity so that fans who cross over between the shows, the movies, and the comic books can have that, continuous thread there. But she might end up going by Photon because she could specifically pull that from her mother. I'll be curious to see how they fit that in. Now, this is based on like real comic book roots and not her most important storyline, but the one that I think is most likely to be adapted and used in the MCU and probably explains a lot of the current direction the MCU is going. There was a fight very shortly after she became a full Avenger where she teamed up with Doctor Strange and Scarlet Witch to fight Dracula. We already know that Scarlet Witch and Doctor Strange are teaming up. We know Monica Rambeau is going to be in the Scarlet Witch TV show. Multiverse of Madness is supposed to be the first scary movie. The multiverse kind of has endless possibilities. And we know through Blade that vampires are coming somewhere down the line in the MCU. It's probably not going to be the basis of the entire movie, but if while traveling through the multiverse, they have some sort of run-in where the three of them have to fight vampires and meet Blade, that would be the most logical way for all of that to come together and how to introduce us to Blade and vampires. I think with the fact that they've specifically stated that WandaVision is leading directly into Doctor Strange 2, I already kind of mentioned this, but like Monica Rambeau is almost more than guaranteed to carry through to that movie to even a small extent. One standout thing is that even though Blade is going to be like a Phase 5 movie, we already have Mahershala Ali cast in that movie, and that's either because it was just too fun of a tease and they didn't want to hang on to that, they just wanted to throw that out there, it's like a fun way to end that event, or it's because this character is being introduced to like Black Panther or like Spider-Man earlier than their official solo movie. I think there's a legitimate chance that we get to meet Eric Brooks in Doctor Strange 2. A minor detail, but there's kind of a known Marvel spoiler account that exists. Roger Wardell. Browse this at your own risk. They haven't said anything in quite some time at this point, but they have leaked a bunch of like since confirmed details. They tweeted a bunch of important things about Endgame like 4 or 5 months before that movie aired. So yeah, it's definitely like a Marvel insider, and one thing they had said is that the character of Jericho Drumm, Brother Voodoo, who was a part of that all-black vampire killing squad, may be introduced in Doctor Strange 2. That movie's a ways out, that could have changed, maybe that's no longer going to be the case. But another interesting pull from the comics is that Jericho Drumm and Monica Rambeau did used to date. So there's a possibility they could meet in this movie, they could already be a pair in this movie. The confirmation of Monica Rambeau coming up in the MCU and the inclusion of vampires and stuff kind of increases the credibility of the fact that Jericho Drumm might be in this movie. Guys, I think this is the movie I'm most excited for right now, is that Doctor Strange 2. And somehow only a fraction of that is the fact that Doctor Strange has been made so much more powerful since his first movie. Now, one thing, if they meet Blade and vampires in Multiverse of Madness, she has the ability to turn into and shoot different energy wavelengths from her hands, one of which is ultraviolet light. I mean, she can just cook vampires with her hands and body. She's probably a more efficient vampire killer than Blade would be. So it kind of makes me wonder a little bit if they would be hesitant to have these two characters meet so early. But they could always have them meet and have an excuse why she isn't in Blade the movie, because otherwise Blade's not going to have anything to do. They might retool the character. Maybe they scale back her powers in some way or whatever. But it would be pretty cool if we meet her, this iteration of her, I should say, since she's been in Captain Marvel, meet her in WandaVision, carry her through to Doctor Strange 2, also introduce Blade there, and then have Blade and Monica Rambeau carry on into Blade's movie. That's the beauty of a cinematic universe, is having those through lines of a character that is familiar carrying us through into a new property. I think that plays out beautifully. Jericho Drumm could fit in there somewhere. I think it makes so much sense. That's a movie I want to see. I want to see Blade and vampires and Scarlet Witch and Doctor Strange and Monica Rambeau all battling it out in the multiverse. I'm down for all that. The only things I can think is that the focus would be so much more on Strange and Scarlet Witch working together to figure out what like the intersection is of their two different forms of magic, that also bringing in Monica Rambeau might distract from that a little bit. And if it also pulls in vampires, then maybe that's too much, too many new characters, too many new things going on. Makes it too easy for Eric to kill vampires. So there's numerous reasons why that might not work, but after all these years, I kind of have the faith in Marvel that they would make that work, and I'm so down for that. Let me know what you guys think. Does that make sense? Is that how you think this character is going to be introduced and the kind of the role they're going to play in the MCU? How would you rather see them introduced, and what storylines would you rather see play out, maybe? I'm always down to talk more about this stuff. It's super fun nerding out with you guys. If you found this video helpful, I have similar ones on Shang-Chi and the Eternals, two other movies that are coming up shortly, so those might serve as other useful introductions. In the end cards here, I'll have a link to a playlist of basically just comic books as a broad topic. There's a bunch of fan casting videos about how maybe they would introduce the X-Men to the MCU, the Fantastic Four, what the future of Spider-Man might look like. I sat down with my buddy Zach. We talked about the new Matt Reeves Batman movies at length. There's videos on Shang-Chi and the Eternals, like I said, but also Beta Ray Bill, who I don't know anymore. I don't know anymore after SDCC if he's going to be in Thor 4. Yeah, there's lots of fun stuff there, so if you enjoyed this, I think you might enjoy those as well. Let me know if there's other specific characters that you think it would be cool to cover in this manner. Other characters and subjects that come to mind after SDCC could be Jane Foster's Thor, talking about the proper Mandarin, Taskmaster, Alexei Shostakov, David Harbour's character in Black Widow, Jericho Drumm, who we haven't had confirmed, but there's still potential there, so that could be a cool one to talk about. Maybe even Blade. Maybe you guys aren't totally familiar with those old movies. I would be curious to find out how accurate those are, how faithful they actually were to the comics. I don't know, actually. That's my entirety of my exposure to Blade. Yeah, let me know down below. Any feedback, guidance you guys have would be very helpful for future iterations of this series. I'm very excited that this has become a series, because I really enjoy making them, so I'm so glad you guys seem to be receptive of it as well. Thank you all so much for watching. I'll see you again soon.